Okay, guys, today we're going to talk about race. Now, I'm not talking about racing against someone on the track. I'm talking about a writing strategy that you can use to answer constructed response questions. Constructed response questions are questions that ask you to use evidence from the text or to explain your thinking. So let's go ahead and get started. So race is actually an acronym. An acronym means that each one of those letters stands for something. The R stands for restate, the A stands for answer, the C is cite, and the E is explain. What I mean by restate is to take some of the words from the question and put them in your answer. So you're restating the question, but you're changing it from a question into a statement. That does not mean that you simply copy down the question the way that it originally was and say that you restated it. Instead, you got to get rid of those question words and rearrange it to where it makes a statement. Okay? Here's an example. How can students improve their study skills? Restated, we could say students can improve their study skills by. Notice that we took some words from the question and put them in our restatement. So we use students and improve their study skills, but we rearranged the words to where they made a statement instead of a question. And we're going to get rid of any question words like how and can, and then obviously we're going to get rid of the question mark. Obviously, you need to answer the question. And sometimes this is the only thing that people do, but that will not work in a race strategy type question. So the first thing you need to make sure is that if there's more than one part to the question, that you've answered all parts of the question. Next comes cite. So this is because they have asked you to either explain your answer or to provide text evidence. You have to cite evidence from the text, okay? There are three parts to this. First, you need to introduce your quote, and if you're taking something word for word from the text, you have to put it in quotation marks because you did not come up with it yourself. Before you just go plopping a quote randomly into your answer, you need to introduce it or give some context about it. Then you're going to give your quote. And then the last thing we call an MLA in-text citation. It sounds fancy, but really all it means is that you're going to say where you got your information from. And we're going to go through that here in the next few slides. So first you want to provide some context. So like what was happening in the text before, during, or after your quote. If it's something that somebody said, who said it? Where did they say it? So where were they when they said it? Why did they say it, and who did they say it to, so that it makes more sense why you have this random quote inside your answer. There are some ways that you can introduce your text, some words that you can use. So you could say the author stated, according to the text says, based on what I read, in paragraph blank, it states blank. For instance, according to the passage in the text, for example, the author wrote, or based on the passage. Now, obviously, if you know who the author is, then you can actually put the author's name there instead of saying the author. And if you know the title of the text, you should actually say the title of the text instead of just saying the text. All right, so let's see what this would look like all put together. So first, we have our introduction. We could add more context to this, but since I'm just kind of giving you a basic example, I used a basic intro, which was according to the text. If you're ever in doubt and you don't know how to introduce your quote, then put according to the text in front of it. Notice there's a comma after our intro because this is an introductory phrase. Since we are taking words from the text, we need to put them inside quotation marks. So there's my beginning quotes. Now, when you quote from the text, you want your words to be written exactly the way they are in the text. So you do not want to change things. You do not want to paraphrase. You want to make sure you spelled it exactly the same way they spelled it, because you are saying this is what the text said, okay? Notice there's no period at the end of my quoted text. That's because the period's going to come later after my citation. Obviously, I need my end quotes after I'm done with what I'm quoting. And then here's the MLA in text citation. It's simply parentheses, the author's last name, you put a space there, nothing else, the page number, and the period comes after the MLA in text citation. So when you are citing text evidence, this is the format that you need to follow. It needs to look exactly like this. We will practice it all year long. All right, and then comes the explain part. In this part, you are actually explaining why you chose the evidence that you chose. So you're explaining how that quote actually proves your point. So I picked this evidence because it shows my point. Here's how it shows my point. There is a stem that you can use over and over again. For that, you can fill in the blanks here. You can start with this evidence shows, fill in the blank. Because. The because is very important. You can't just tell me the evidence shows it and not explain to me how it shows it, because maybe it's obvious to you, but it might not be obvious to the reader. So you have to explain why the quote that you picked proves that you are correct. So let's practice. Washing your hands. Washing your hands is one of the most important practices to prevent germs from spreading. It removes germs that can cause diseases. Did you know there are two types of germs? Resident microorganisms and transient microorganisms. Resident germs don't cause disease. They will always live on your skin, even when you wash your hands. Transient microorganisms transfer on your hands and cause infections. Many people around the world are more vulnerable to or at risk of contracting respiratory infections, as well as the cold and flu virus, due to not washing or improperly washing hands. Remember to stay healthy by washing your hands with soap and water. All right, let's look at our question. It says, use the race strategy to answer the question, according to the text, what does the word vulnerable mean? Use evidence from the text. So obviously we could go look this up in the dictionary, but it's asking you to explain it based on what is in the text. So the first thing we have to do is restate. So we're going to get rid of any of the question words and the question mark, because we do not want to just simply rewrite the question. Now we have to rearrange the words a little bit so that they can make a statement. All right, we're going to take the word. Obviously, we need vulnerable, and instead of mean, we're going to say means, because we need our subject to match our verb. So we're going to change that to the word vulnerable means. Then we have to come up with our answer. Okay, oh, my check mark's a little bit in the wrong place there, but it was supposed to check that box. So my answer is in danger of or susceptible to. Now comes my citation. I want to make sure that I found it in the text, so I went over here and I underlined where it was. And this is probably what I'm going to use for my quote here. So I went back to the text, I underlined what I could use for my quote. I have to introduce it, so here's my context. When mentioning the word vulnerable, and then my introduction, the text states, quote, at risk, comma, contracting. Then, since I don't know who the author is, I put unknown for the author's last name. I put a space, and there's only one page, so the page number is 1, and that is in the parentheses. Now I have to explain how this quote that I chose proves that the answer, the word vulnerable, means in danger of or susceptible to. So I'm going to use the evidence shows that the word vulnerable means in danger of or susceptible to, because it says someone who is vulnerable is at risk. The word risk shows the danger. It also says they could contract the infection, which means that they are susceptible to it. Now, notice that I used my question stem, the evidence shows, and because. The final part is to put it all together. So you would simply have to copy and paste your parts over, and your answer would look something like this. Let's try one more. Yoga in the classroom. In the last few years, brain breaks have become popular in the classroom. Have you ever thought about the benefits of yoga in the classroom? Yoga reduces stress and anxiety. Students may have family challenges as well as daily stress about life, school, and friends. Yoga provides a time to clear their mind. It also improves memory and attention span and allows students to focus, helping them to do better in school. It provides mindfulness, teaching students how to become less anxious and more relaxed. Some schools have yoga classes instead of detention, teaching students to meditate. Yoga teaches students lifelong skills. Okay, so the question here is use the RACE strategy to answer the question, what does the author think about yoga in the classroom? Use evidence from the text. All right, let's start by getting rid of those question words and the question mark. Let's see what words we can take from the question and put in our answer. I'm going to go with the author. I'm going to change it to thinks. And then yoga, obviously, in the classroom has to be part of our restatement. So the author thinks yoga in the classroom, and then our answer is a good idea. Oh, at least those check marks line up. I must have moved the others. Sorry about that. All right. So now we've answered. We're saying the author thinks that yoga in the classroom is a good idea. But how did we know that? So let's go back to the text and let's find where it says that. Okay, well, they say that it improves memory and attention span and allows students to focus. That sounds like the author thinks it's a good idea. So let's use that quote. First, we got to introduce it. We're just going to go with, according to yoga in the classroom, having yoga in the classroom, that's our introduction. And then here's our quote, improves memory and attention span and allows students to focus. Again, we don't know the author, so we did unknown and space and then one inside the parentheses. The period is after the citation, so we're good there. Now we have to explain, why does this quote about improving memory and attention span prove that the author thinks yoga would be good in the classroom? So, the evidence shows that the author thinks having yoga in the classroom is a good idea because improved memory, attention, and focus are all areas that would be beneficial to help students do better in the classroom. Therefore, since these things are benefits of yoga, the author would want them in the classroom. Notice my stem again. The evidence shows and then because. Then finally, you would put it all together and it would look like this. Now, when we answer our questions in class, we do color code, and we use the same color coding that we use here. We do have a little checklist that can help you, and you can check off your parts of race as you do them. So we will keep practicing with this until everybody is really good at it. At first, it seems really hard and daunting, but then I promise you, once you get the hang of it, you'll be busting these race answers out like they're no problem at all. All right, so now we're going to go and practice on our own. Good luck.